Hello, welcome back to the Your Everyday Strength podcast. My name is Josh Sternberg, and if you are just joining us here for the very first time, welcome. Thank you very much for being here. If you are returning, honestly, by this point, you should almost know exactly how the fucking opening goes. Welcome. Thank you very much again for being here. Now, what's up? Today's episode is going to be a 2025 in review. Now, I'm pretty sure you would have known that when you clicked the fucking title, because that's probably what the title is going to be. Pretty fucking self-explanatory. We're going to be going through the absolute fucking adventure that 2025 has been. Now, we've still got like 2 weeks left of the year. I'll be honest with you, today's date is the Thursday, the 11th. This will be coming out on Monday, so that'll be whatever date that is. I should probably know these things off the top of my head, but alas, I don't. Monday's date will be the 15th. But next week's episode is going to be a little bit of a how to review / reflect upon your year, plus a goal setting, intention setting strategy for 2026, which I think will be really cool. Today's episode probably going to be a little bit of a longer one, so strap the fuck in, because 2025 has been insane. Insanity. If you had sat me down on the 11th of December, 2024, and told me any of the things that had happened this year, I probably would have fucking laughed. There's no way. I would have thought 99% of what has happened this year was even fucking feasible, let alone going to happen. And I think that that's one of the best adventures of all, is no matter how much we think we know in life, no matter what we would like to control about our lives, we can control so much. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we have such little control at the same time. And to be completely honest, for me to even be able to remember 90% of what's happened, I have actually gone back through my Instagram, which is open on my computer to the right of me, and looked at my monthly dumps to see what I got up to each month, just to give myself a bit of a fucking better understanding. Because as I said, this year has been huge, and I know myself personally, I'm going to take a lot of time to sit, reflect upon the year that has been. And as I said, I'll run through some strategies and stuff like that, and basically give you the framework that I'm going to be operating with next week in the next episode. So without further ado, grab the popcorn. If you're driving, don't grab popcorn. I don't know, just strap the fuck in. Let's kick it off. I'm going to try and run month by month, but let's be realistic. Anyone who knows me knows I'll probably run on a tangent or two. To kick us off, we started the year. Now, anyone who's been a part of the journey with myself for the past 12 months will know pretty well how the year started. And let's be realistic, it wasn't great. For me, so much had happened at the back end of 2024, and my body was essentially just in fight or flight mode to get through to the end of the year, that I never really took the time or even had the tools necessary to be able to effectively evaluate everything that had changed within that year. So when I started in January, I had spent probably about a week where I was working as minimal as possible, and I just had to really try and sit with myself as much as I could. I was doing a lot of journaling. I was doing a lot of starting the process of meditating again. I was starting the process of essentially diving into myself, and didn't necessarily start, but definitely was a big leading factor into a hell of a lot of the work that I have actually done for myself within this last 12 months. And I could almost say utilize that as the catalyst of change. January for me was the time where I really sat with myself enough and allowed myself to feel everything I needed to feel, to know and understand that there's better out there. There's more there for me. And I knew that I just had to probably eat shit a little bit and be able to effectively do it. So starting off in Jan, and quite literally the caption of my monthly dump for that month was, the theme was falling in love with self. For me, I had to find a place where I felt content within myself. I had to feel comfortable within myself, and I had to love myself, because I didn't even realize it, but I'd almost grown to resent myself. And that's a really fucking hard feeling. There were so many things that I was doing at that time that I just didn't enjoy, didn't like, didn't feel comfortable with. But I was just kind of doing what I thought I needed to do to get by. And although at the time I survived and I got through it and, did all of the things, I knew there was more for me. And with that, I actually started with a business coach. Now, I technically started with my business coach, Ash from Forward Moves, at the back end of 2024. We kind of started like 2 weeks before Christmas, so it doesn't really count, I guess. But we really hit the system, hit the ground running for the new year. And for me, that was probably one of the biggest decisions that helped shape the year that's been in terms of business, in terms of a lot of personal work that I have done. And I'm really fucking grateful for that time. Now, I worked with Ash for quite a few months, and we really took charge of, the direction I wanted to head with my business, the work I wanted to do through that opportunity of working with Ash. I was then fortunate enough to be invited onto her podcast, or, the Forward Moves podcast with Ash and Kira, which I'll get to in a moment because that was technically February. And there were so many things that happened as a result of that just have fucking changed the trajectory of probably my entire life. So it's really funny because people talk about, one small thing, the butterfly effect, right? Like, you can have one minute change that changes everything. And I truly believe that signing up with Ash and Forward Moves at that point in time was that small internal shift that just changed so much of the trajectory of my life, my year, my life, everything. So January for me was quite literally just like getting back to myself, getting back to my roots, finding the things that I enjoyed doing, spending time with myself. I probably spent more time with myself in January than I have ever before, just sitting in the back of my car, reading, journaling, meditating, listening to podcasts, listening to YouTube videos, really trying to dive a little bit deeper and hone in on what I would classify, I guess, as my more spiritual based journey. Now, anyone who's listened to this potty for a while knows that I am actually a fairly spiritual individual. Now, I have a full podcast on it called Spirituality Without the Woo. You can go back and listen to that if you haven't already. I am someone who has to still have logic, reason, and rationale behind things, but I'm also somebody who, as the years gone on, have allowed a lot of things to just happen. And as a result of those things and detaching a little bit, really fucking cool things have come as a result. So January was all about falling back in love with myself and finding a routine and a rhythm that worked for me, reestablishing habits and consistency around routine with training, nutrition, with my work, with all of it. And through that, it actually saw me start to really take charge of getting a little bit more active on social media. Now, as an online coach, it's pretty fucking self-explanatory that you need to utilize social media. And I was slacking off. Let's be realistic. So the production value of my content went up. The consistency of my content went up, and everything started to trickle positively in a really good direction. With February coming, as I said, I was fortunate enough to actually get onto the Forward Moves podcast. Ash sent me a message and said, "Hey, do you want to jump on?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah, that'd be sick." I love podcasts. And we jumped on and had an absolutely fucking phenomenal chat. Now, as a result of that chat, I was very fortunate. I now work with Kira, who was one of the hosts. I coach her. And that chat was, at the time, I loved it, and I knew that there was a reason why I loved it so much, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But since then, I know that chat was the inspiration for quite a lot of the path that I took with work, with myself, with all of it for the remainder of the year. As I got through February, everything started to sort of not necessarily click, but it just started to change a little bit, right? So for me, February was huge. I got to watch my best mate, Darren, marry his now wife. She's always been beautiful, Keely, but got to watch Daz marry his wife, which was a fucking fantastic weekend. I had a lot of opportunities presented as a result of the podcast. I started working with Anabolics and Nutrition Warehouse as a sponsored athlete, which was really fucking cool. Footy, I went back and I started playing fucking AFL, which like for me was something that I'd set myself at the back end of last year as like this huge goal that I didn't even know if I was going to be able to achieve it. Like at the time I set the goal, I hadn't even been running. I couldn't run. I was like 115 kilos or some shit. And so footy started back up and I finished a cut that I'd been doing for about 12 weeks. So I dropped around 14 kilos in 12 weeks, which was really fucking cool. And I got down to being roughly the leanest I've ever been, which I've now surpassed with this most recent cut that I've been doing. And, I got to just continue to capitalize on the progression that I'd made with January. My mum came down to the Gold Coast for a week and we got to catch up. And that for me was really cool because I hadn't seen her in a couple of years. She'd never actually met Sammy. And there's a lot of things that we probably needed to work on together. And as a result of the work that I had been doing on myself, it was a time where I knew we needed to talk, to talk openly, honestly, have some probably pretty tough conversations, but understanding that like for the basis of our relationship to continue to thrive for the future, these discussions were necessary. And that was a really big pivotal moment for me because it almost allowed me to reclaim a little bit of the power within myself. And it started to show me that like, hey, there's some really positive things that are going to come as a result of the work that I was doing. As we started to progress through Feb, it just kept getting better and better. I spent so much time at the beach with Sammy. I spent time with friends, family. I started to find a pretty fucking good groove with everything, which was awesome. The month went on and we hit March. March was a really fucking cool month because we started to actually, footy started to progress. We got into fucking practice matches. We got into all of it. I spent a lot more time with like friends than I had done previously. I'd spent a lot of time just, building my business, pushing work, pushing training, pushing myself. And all of it was just continuing to build on and capitalize on the progression that I'd already made up until that point. But it was also just the building blocks and continued to be the foundation for the year that was going to come. There wasn't anything crazy that happened in March. It was more just like, continuing progression. And I think that that's a really key aspect of this chat is not every month is going to have these like huge life-defining movements in it. But what it will have is little moments that are the building blocks. They're the foundations. They small moments that cascade into big. It's the same as training and nutrition, right? Like these small daily routines, consistencies, habits, etc. They all progress and then they end up being something fucking massive in the long term with results. With March, I started to put the foundations in place to actually launch this podcast, which was really fucking cool. Now that come as a result of when I did the podcast with Ash and Kira, I fucking loved it. It had a really positive feedback from everyone. There was a lot of really cool things that came from it. And it sparked something inside of me to say, hey, I really want to do this more. I want to do this again. I kept putting it off and being like, nah, I can't afford a studio right now. I have to wait till I get the fancy camera and I have to wait till I get all the equipment that I need and all the rest of it. And I kind of just one day said, no, fuck that. Like, I can't keep putting this off. I have to take the plunge. I have to dive in. I have to choose the scary thing. And the scary thing to me was doing the podcast. If I'd continued to procrastinate it, fuck. If I hadn't launched this podcast, I don't even know what my life would look like right now, because as you'll hear as we go through, so many things came as a result. So many things have come as a result of this podcast that I would not have even been able to put into words. And March also was the start of someone. The week we had the cyclone, slid into the DMs, replied to one of my stories, and I was like, oh, you know what? Like, we're in a cyclone. I don't have much else to do. May as well chat to her. Miss Jessica. Now, we all know how that's gone if you follow me on social media, and I couldn't be fucking happier, but it's just, again, I mentioned that the podcast with Forward Moves was kind of the catalyst for a lot of changes, and what a lot of people don't know is Jess actually found me as a result of knowing Ash and Kira and Forward Moves and having known them for a while. She had heard the podcast and been like, this guy sounds all right. Those are exact words. And followed me on Instagram and slid the DMs. And now here we are. So again, a little bit of a butterfly effect. If I'd never reached out to Ash in the first place, if I'd never started, if I'd never done any of it, if I'd never got on the podcast, like so many things happen as a result of such small change that just change the trajectory of your fucking life. And it is actually insane. So to say there wasn't any huge moments in March is probably underselling it a little bit, but it definitely had a lot of like really, really cool things happen. And getting through March and prepping the podcast and being at client comps and pushing business and ramping the sponsorship with fucking anabolics and all the rest of it, like it just started to take shape and show me maybe there is a little bit more in this life that I can have access to. Maybe there is a little bit more that I will have available to me just on the other side of fear. And as we know, from there, we hit April. And April was, again, another one of those months that just fucking took charge. Footy was cranking. We were played our first games, kicked a goal, fucking launched the podcast, still hung out with Sammy, got to do some really fucking cool things, hung out with friends, just all of it. And I continued throughout this entire time to dive further into myself. And I found that the more I was able to sit with myself, the more I was able to practice presence, mindfulness, gratitude, reflection, more doors and avenues started to open for me that just cascaded. Now, I was very fortunate that I had some pretty fucking cool guests on the podcast. Now, if you don't remember the guests back then, my very first guest episode was Holly Saville, the performance dietitian, and we had an insane chat around training and nutrition for performance and things like that from a dietetics perspective, which was fucking cool. I had Connor Walsh on the potty, who I actually ended up working with Connor for a period of the year this year with the nutrition. And that was a really fucking cool chat. And I had so many really fucking cool things happen. And in all honesty, like it just, I keep coming back to it because it's the theme of the whole year. Small things leading to big things. And for me, that's just been the entire thing. That has been the year. There's like these little defining moments that aren't necessarily big in that particular moment in time, but then when I look back upon reflection, they've just fucking blossomed. And that's come from a lot of like deep inner work with myself, being able to like really sit with myself, look at things not just from a positive perspective, but look at everything through so many different lenses and be able to continue on this path despite the uncomfortableness of how it felt sometimes. So that was April. Again, just one of those months that kind of ticked the boxes. I went back in April and I actually started seeing a psychologist again. For me, at that point in time, I was doing the best I had been doing in a very long time. And that was the exact reason I wanted to go back to a psychologist, because I figured, you know what? I've always gone to a psychologist when I've been struggling, when I've been down, when I've been depressed, when I've been borderline suicidal. And now that I'm not that, there's a lot of aspects of my life that I want to continue to work on. So I went back to a psychologist with a completely different viewpoint to one that I had previously, which had allowed me to continue this journey into myself and continue this journey of self-development and set the foundations up even further, even stronger for the continual growth over the course of this year. That was March, honestly. That was April, sorry. April. We've already done March. April. April was a big month. Very big month indeed. In May, I started off and I got to do at the time, a pretty fucking cool podcast episode. If you haven't listened to it, go back, with Jimmy Judge, the man himself. I loved Jimmy. I'd followed him on Instagram and TikTok and everything like that for so long. And then just randomly sending him a message and being like, hey, bro, would you like to be on a podcast? I've got 4 episodes so far. And he just come back to me and was like, brother, I'd love to. Let's do it in person. So he was my first face-to-face guest in person. And that was an incredible chat, because through that chat, it actually led to me finding Travis Cochran, the mindset technician. Now, anyone who's been around recently, I've done a podcast with Trav. I've done a podcast on my time working with Trav. And it just goes to show, again, I'm going to continue to come back to it, because I believe the more we sit and reflect about things that have been happening, done, etc., the more we actually start to see that all these little things do actually mean quite a lot. So by me randomly messaging Jimmy, got him on the podcast, by me doing the podcast with Jimmy, and then researching further about how to find guests for the next episodes, we chat. Trav was one of the recommendations. I went on his. I'd seen that Jimmy had actually just done a podcast with him. I used that as a way of messaging and being like, hey man, I just had Jimmy on my podcast. I'd love it if you were able to come on and have a bit of a chat with me. And in that podcast, it just opened my eyes so much to a hugely different realm of possibilities that were available to me. And I didn't know then. I kind of knew. I had this weird deep feeling, this intuitive little gut thing that something was going to happen as a result of this podcast. I didn't know what, I didn't know how, I didn't know when. But through that, I actually kept in contact with Trav the entire time, just back and forward, chats here or there. He actually sent through a couple of different guests that I have had on this year. So Kyle Current and Mitch Hunter, both of those were referrals from Trav. And I just got to have chats with people that I wouldn't have necessarily had even available to me or even within my network, which was really fucking cool. May was just, it was huge. Again, it was just one of those things that it just kept the needle pushing forward. And I was so incredibly stoked for everything that came. Daz had his beautiful little baby boy, Koa, Darren and Keely. So they had, my little nephew. He's the man himself. Continued to play with footy. Hit some pretty big goals within my business, which was fucking sick. And just continued to develop over the course of that month. As I said, I keep saying there's nothing massive that happened, but in reality, there actually was. There was quite a lot of really big and cool things that had happened throughout the year. And it just continued to progress and grow and grow. And then June hit and it was fucking huge. Now, the back end of May, I celebrated 7 years as a coach. I celebrated a whole range of different things. June come round and let's just say it was fucking huge. It was my birthday. I turned 29 and it allowed me a deep point of reflection as to what the 12 months prior to that had looked like. Now, I'd covered it in a post, but June 2024, my birthday, 28 years of age, I was actually at APL Nationals and I was flying out to Japan the next day on a solo trip. That solo trip for me essentially changed the course of my life. I came back from that trip and quit my job. I left a relationship that I was in not long after and had to move house, had my car blow up, had just about everything you could have happen to you. within a very small amount of time after that. And it was almost as if my life was, or the universe was like, hey, we're going to tear everything down and we're going to burn everything because you're going to start afresh, better, and with more opportunities presented to you. And that's exactly what it did. I celebrated 29, surrounded with so much love, surrounded by so many people. And it was the first birthday in quite a few years where I sat there and I was excited. I was so excited. I wasn't anxious about getting older. I was excited for what the year ahead had available to me because I knew that everything that had happened in the last 12 months had happened for a reason, and that the next 12 months were going to be even bigger and better. And fucking boy, oh boy, has it been since. Other really cool things that happened is more podcast guests. Did an episode with Daniel Kirkbride, David Sinclair. I got on a fucking billboard. Yes, that's right. Not just one, actually. 2 billboards in the heart of Surfers Paradise. This was through Nui, the direct debit service that I use for all of my coaching. They hit me up and they were like, do you want a billboard? And I was like, fucking yes, absolutely. I would love a billboard. So I got to go and be on a billboard. And that was probably one of the most surreal feelings I could think of. Like, who gets their face on a fucking billboard? Me. It was sick. It was such a cool, surreal feeling. Said I turned 29. I got a year older, ticked off a massive business goals. I had fucking clients were killing it. It was Sammy and me against the world. We were doing our thing. There was just so many really cool things that had happened. I'd started working with Connor at that point, Connor Walsh, and another coach, Nick McCallum. So Nick was taking care of my training, and then Connor was taking care of my nutrition for a period of time there, which I've since wrapped up with both of them, and I do it all myself now. But yeah, there was a fucking hell of a lot of things that were happening throughout that month, and it just continued forward. Like, July presented a lot of opportunities. It presented a lot of more time for growth. July was probably one of the months that showed me everything had just been going up, 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 up. And it wasn't necessarily that it was coming down, but it kind of established like a little bit more of an even keel. There wasn't anything massive that happened. There wasn't anything overly fantastic that happened. I'm going to save it for another podcast episode that Jessica and myself are going to do together. But there was a few things that had happened within our quote unquote relationship at that point where we nearly made a very fucking massive mistake. And I won't dive too much deeper into that today, but we will talk about that at some point, because I think it's a nice insight into maybe trusting the universe a little bit more and trusting that, hey, people come into your life for a reason. You don't always know what that reason is at that particular point in time, but the universe will never bring anyone into your path that you're not ready for. And for us, there was so much external going on that we nearly lost each other, which is very unfortunate. And I'm glad, obviously I'm very glad that it didn't happen, and it's continued to progress how it has now. Fuck, I'm going to get sad. But yeah, it was tough. It was tough. It wasn't easy. It was one of those months that kind of was like, hey, it's been great this whole year. And this is just a little reminder that, like, hey, you need to sometimes take a step back and evaluate life and evaluate some things that are happening to continue to be allowed to progress forward. And that's exactly what happened. So July was a good month. It was a great month. There was a lot that, happened. But yeah, that's enough on that for now. So don't cry. But moving on. August was huge because we had like APL Nationals. We had some really cool things just happening over the course of this month as well. There was this was almost like that reset point. So if July was the point that was like, hey, take a little bit of a step back, reevaluate a lot of the aspects of your life that are happening at the moment. August was the month that was like, okay, cool, you're ready for this next chapter. It's now on you to grab it and go. August was actually the month that I decided I was going to be moving back to Melbourne. And if you haven't heard, well, I haven't really fully spoke about it, but I am moving back to Melbourne at the start of 2026. You've probably seen me talk about it on Instagram if you follow me there, or you might have heard it in the podcast. I can't imagine there's too many people who listen to the podcast who don't follow me on Instagram. If that is you, follow me. Don't be a dog. But yeah, August was like really cool. And I got to go down to APL Nats. Spent some time down there. It was sick to see my clients doing well, the fucking progression of APL as a whole. I did a full podcast episode on it, so you can definitely go back and listen to that. And yeah, that was also, as I said, like life had handed me an opportunity, and it was like, okay, you can either choose to push into the scary, push into the unknown, or you can stay where you are right now. And I'm very glad that I decided to push into the unknown, made the decision about moving. And since I made that decision, as always happens, when you make the right decision, life just falls into place as if it's like fucking perfectly, just the little stepping stones are right where they need to be at the perfect distance. And it's pushed through there. So that was fucking cool. The other sick thing that happened in August is we finally got our hands on IQ Sups, Synapse. To see this project come to life from quite literally just a random message of, hey, do you want to start a sup company? To then have a physical product in my hand that I had formulated and that we had formulated and gone back and forward with testing and taste testing and going through different blending companies to ensure that we're able to get the right ingredients that we wanted at the right dosages that we wanted. Going through this entire process was so fucking eye-opening and cool. And it just showed me like a different avenue for life. So that was probably one of my fucking favorite parts of that month as well, is having the stock in hand. Like it was sick. It was honestly sick. As well, that was like the last fucking, played my last game of footy for the season, which like at the start of the year, I set myself a goal of playing 10 games. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know how the year was going to progress. I didn't know anything. I just set myself a goal of playing 10 games for the year. Now, unfortunately for myself, I had been plagued by shin splints the entire year. But fortunately, I was able to play every single week. So I didn't actually miss a game. I played in the end, due to weather and things like that, our season was cut a little bit short, but I ended up playing 17 games, kicked 5 goals, and got 1 best on ground, which was really fucking cool. After 11 years off, to go back and play footy where my starting point was so far gone. The last time I played AFL at 17, I was 55 or 54 kilos. When I decided to go back and play at the back end of last year, I was 115 kilos. So I was 60 kilos heavier than when I'd previously played, nearly over 2 times my size. I hadn't ran in 7 years. I hadn't really done much cardio or fitness that entire time. So it was any wonder I ended up with fucking shin splints. But as I said, I was very fortunate that I was able to play the game every week. It did hinder quite a lot of my life externally. I wasn't able to really train as much as I'd like, which meant that I didn't necessarily get to progress in skills, fitness, or anything like that as much as I would have liked to. I wasn't really able to train legs too much. And funnily enough, I actually did a story on it this morning, but I decided not to go back to play footy next year because there's a few different reasons. One was the shin splints. That's the biggest main reason. I just couldn't, I don't want to go back and live in pain and only able to play 1 game a week. I loved playing. I loved playing with the boys. I loved getting back into a team sport. I loved being around the environment and all of it. But then having every other aspect of my life basically impacted by it was just not a fun time. So there's that, as well as like moving back to Melbourne at the start of next year. I don't know the exact date. And and trying to get a fucking spot in a team in Melbourne where it's incredibly competitive would probably be quite a hard task. And being realistic, I don't want to play in Melbourne winter. There's fuck all chance I want to be running out when it's fucking 5 degrees, cold, wet, etc. I'll just go to every game I can. I'll go and get my fix by going to watch the Hawks 2026 premiers, baby. You heard it here first. Go watch the Hawks fucking do their thing. So yeah, that was it was a pretty big month, August, when we think about it in hindsight. September again was just big. It was pretty fucking cool. Got to go and do the gala dinner for footy. And I called it here a big month of expansion energy. There was just a lot of forward momentum in all different areas of my life. Training, nutrition, IQ subs, coaching, all of it. Like, it was just all progressing forward. And September, I actually started working with Mr. Travis Cochran, the technician, the mindset technician, as I spoke about just a little bit ago. As I said, I'd already kept in contact with Trav the entire time, and I knew that at some point in my life I was going to work with him. I didn't know when, and I didn't know what would be the pushing, the deciding factor. And it wasn't until I woke up, and it was a Saturday morning. I was driving to the beach, and I had this weird thing in my brain go, now's the time. And I'd actually listened to a podcast he'd done 2 days prior to that with one of his previous business coaches, Taylor. And in my brain, it was like, no, now's the time. Stop putting it off. So I did. I reached out. I was like, let's go. We're on. We're starting. And I did a whole episode on this, so I'm not going to go into it too deep here. But the progression that had come as a result of that personally is fucking insane. I'm still finding aspects out that quite literally changed the inner workings of who I am as a person for the better, and allowed me to really dive deeper into myself than I had ever dove before, which was confronting. It was hard. It was every emotion you could possibly think of. It was happy. It was sad. I was angry, all of it. But it was fucking beautiful. And that was, that for me was amazing. I loved it. And it just continued to progress and push my life. So September was quite a big month. Overall, just everything. There were so many cool things that had happened, and I loved that. October had started to see, the I guess if September starting working with Trav was like the bottom of where we were going to be going through, October started to see everything then come to fruition. It started to see these changes happening positively. It started to see a shift in who I was as a person. It started to see a shift who I was as a coach, as a friend, as a partner, as all of it in such a positive direction. Now, I lost a lot in October and September. Clients who were misaligned and found their way out. But I also gained a lot as well, a lot of mental clarity, a lot of just clarity on my life, who I wanted to be, how I wanted to show up. And I started to see these little trickles of light coming through of those little monuments of change that were starting to come to fruition as a result of all of the work that I had been doing. So October was just one of those months. It was another month of just ticking the boxes, pushing through, hanging out with friends. I hit another fucking pretty huge goal of work, which was fantastic. And my job as a coach is to help change people's lives for the better. Any coach who says they're not in it for the money, I would believe, because no good coach hangs around for a long time just for the money. It's fucking hard. There's plenty of other jobs, there's plenty of other opportunities, there's plenty of other industries where you will make just as much or more money with less stress. So as a coach, my biggest thing is I just love helping people. I love being involved in people's transformations. But absolutely at the same time, I love making money. I love allowing myself the ability to actually set my future up for myself, for future children, for all of it, right? Like nobody works or does anything that they do just because they want to. There needs to come a point where it's like, okay, cool. I also need to do this for money and things like that as well. But yeah, October was fucking sick. As I said, I started to, take a bit more control of my training, a bit more control of my nutrition, and all the rest of it. I traveled down to Victoria again, and it was fucking fun. It was fun. Shot a massive campaign for IQ, which was insane. That is up on my Instagram, and that's fucking cool. If you haven't, go and check it out. The team that we got to work with, Brad, one of my mates that I've been friends with for years, I got to employ his services. One of my favorite things about life and all of the rest of it is we always have these people that we meet. And as I said, there's always somebody who comes in your life for a reason. Now, unfortunately, I've known Brad for quite a few years now. And then we were looking to do this massive campaign for IQ. There was only one person I was ever going to reach out to. And the workmanship that came through from it as a byproduct, fucking insane. Go check it out if you haven't already. It's awesome. It's also on IQ Subs. If you don't follow IQ Subs, go and follow IQ Subs. Go buy Synapse. It's the best pre-workout you'll ever find. Trust me. That's a plug. Absolutely is a plug. Go and do it. But yeah, October just continued to progress, right? Like it just continued to show up for myself, show up for those around me better, pushing through everything that had been thrown my way and just learning how to deal with and navigate all of these different obstacles was fucking awesome. November was very much the same. Like November was a fairly big month overall. There's a lot of cool things that had happened. And I really started to see the fruits of my labor come to life. I'd started to see all the changes that I'd been making start to pay off. I'd started to see a new sort of zest, for life, a discipline that I hadn't yet found. I'd found myself becoming more of who I truly am than ever before. I allowed myself to become more of who I am than ever before. I worried less about the thoughts of others, and I decided to go all in on myself. And it might sound like weird for someone to say that, like, go all in on yourself, like who else? But at the same time, a lot of people don't. A lot of people do stand back. A lot of people do worry about what others are thinking too much. And I've definitely been one of those people over the course of my journey. So to fully step into who I am as a person and to see the positive impacts that have come as a result of that, fucking astounding. Currently, as it stands at the moment, I'm the fittest I've ever been. I am the fastest I've ever been. I'm not the strongest, but I'm pretty fucking strong for my body weight, given all the other things that I'm doing, considering last week I ran a 5K PB and then still was able to hit 190 for 7 on an RDL. My fucking vertical jump is through the roof. My seated broad jump is through the roof. So like my athleticism is coming back. My just passion for life and being able to do all of these different fucking cool modalities of training is bringing back a spark to my training and my enjoyment in all of that aspect of things. Nutritionally, I'm the leanest I've ever been in my entire life. I'm sitting around 93 to 94 kilos. And I'm quite literally the leanest I've ever been, which has been fucking cool as well. Not because it's come in as a byproduct of ego or anything like that, but because I'm starting to see a physical external result for all of the internal work I've been doing for all of these different things that I've been working on coming to fruition. December has been fucking crazy to say the least already. I said today's the 11th. And I can tell you right now that if the start of this month is anything to go by, and I know what's coming up in the next 2 weeks, like next week is my last week of work, and then I go to Townsville for a week. I'm driving up there with Sammy, and then I'm driving back. And basically once I drive back, it's going to be the new year, but I'm going to start looking for houses in Melbourne. And then that's when I will start the process of moving, which I will take everyone along on that journey because I'm sure there will be a hell of a lot of chapters to go. But yeah, that has been, I guess, a fairly condensed summary of this year. The biggest theme upon reflection is from little things, big things grow. Setting the foundation, saying yes to more things that scare me, and diving deeper into myself than I ever have before has paid off in ways that I could not even express. If I truly had to sit down and write every single thing that happened, and I'm sure if I went through my journals, I'm sure if I went back through all my diaries and my writing and all of it, I would just be in awe of everything. So if you take anything from this podcast, anything at all, it's this. Say yes to more shit that scares you. Dive in to the scary aspects of life. Dive into yourself. Truly sit with yourself and see the parts of you that you don't let anyone else see. Confront them, work through them. And I can promise you that everything that will come as a result of that will be greater than you could ever even anticipate. For those of you who have been on this journey this year, for those of you who have tuned in, who have listened, who have shared the podcast, all of it, I cannot thank you enough. I genuinely cannot thank you enough. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me rant and rave. Thank you for listening to the guests that I bring on. Thank you for allowing me this channel to provide my inner thoughts and feelings in a different form of content. I cannot wait for 2026. There's already some really fucking cool things happening and in place and planned for this podcast. Two of the first podcast guests I've got of 2026 are going to be fucking massive. So I'm very excited for that. But yeah, otherwise, it's time to continue to fucking grip and rip into the back end of the year. Thank you very much for being here. As always, reach out if you have any questions. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to share it or send me a message. Once again, thank you very much. I love you all, and I'll speak to you on the next one.